Hi everyone, this is Ashley Latecki-Ellenboss with Sky House Herb School and Apothecary, and today we'll be talking about boundaries and sagebrush, and specifically looking and exploring boundaries. What are they? Why do we need them? How do we create them? And then looking at an ally, sagebrush, which I think is a really nice plant that we can use alongside our boundary work. Before we go into that, I do want to invite all of you to our Summer Herbal Speaker Series, which is now underway. It's free. You can register on our website, skyhouseherbs.com. Go to the events tab and then scroll down to find our summer speaker series. And all you have to do is just click the event details and register, and we'll send you a link so you can join us on Zoom. And these are free. However, you're welcome to donate to United Plant Savers, which is a wonderful organization that I love to support. They protect endangered native plants. And we've got 3 more talks coming up, so you haven't missed them all yet. So please try to join us if you can. All right, so boundaries. Why do we need them? In essence, boundaries help us to maintain healthy relationships. I think right now I'm doing a lot of boundary work, which is why this topic has come up, because I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with. We struggle with knowing how to create healthy boundaries, when to create a boundary, when to let something go. And, if we think about boundaries creating and maintaining healthy relationships, really more maintaining, then we can see that a lot of our relationships could probably be better. We could have a better experience of those relationships if there are clearer boundaries in place. So, when it comes to all relationships, not every relationship needs the same boundaries. And that's kind of the neat thing about boundaries, is that they can shift and change depending on who and what the context is of our relationship. For example, with children, there needs to be different boundaries and different things set up to keep them safe and to keep that hierarchical structure in place. Whereas with friends, it's different, right? With friends, there isn't a hierarchy. Typically, shouldn't be. And so there may be boundaries that will help things stay even, right? Like I call you and you call me and we call each other. I don't always reach out to you, right? And so that might be something that you have to set. But here's the thing about boundaries, is that you have to start with yourself and asking yourself the question, who is in the spotlight? And this was something that, I'm a little bit, right now I'm in a phase of a lot of self-exploration and kind of like digging in my psyche. So I was joking with my husband. I was like, I feel like I'm a little bit of a therapy junkie these days, because I'm in like support groups and I, see different advisors and therapists, because I really want to get to the bottom of some of the complexities and issues that are showing up in my life and in my relationships and in my psyche. And so a lot of what I'm sharing with you is actually kind of gleaned together from conversations I've had with my spiritual advisors, with my therapists, with some of my group classes that I do. So I can't take credit for any of this, but I can take credit for enacting it, embodying it, and sharing it. So the first question is, who is in the spotlight? And this was so helpful for me to hear, because when it came to boundaries, especially with one that I'm working on in particular in my family, it was all about trying to, change the behavior of the other person. So that's not the spotlight on me. And in my group session, they said, put your arms out to the sides and make a big circle. And that is the only person, everything within that circle is under your control and is a part of your domain and is your responsibility. Everything outside of that circle is not yours. So, let other people have it. And the thing is that when we take on other people's stuff and we try to help or fix other people, we actually rob them from their own chance to be responsible and to feel that pride in taking action and doing things for yourself. We call it, in one of the groups I'm in called Al-Anon, we call it enabling behavior. So we don't want to enable other people. We want to empower other people. And we do that really by working on ourselves. We do that by embodying things and being the change we want to see. And that actually is going to be more helpful in helping other people to do that in the same way. So, right? Okay. So whoever's within the hula hoop is yours. And so when I'm making a boundary, I'm considering boundaries, I need to think to myself, okay, I'm in the center. So what do I need? And this is something that's been just so revolutionary for me. And I feel like I can't point fingers as to why. This could be karmic from past lives, but this tendency to always put others first and to always think about what needs to be done to pacify the people or make everyone else happy or to be liked or to, keep the peace. And this often comes at the sacrifice of your own needs. And so one thing that I've been doing a lot lately is, when someone asks me, hey, can we do this? Or what do you want to do here? I know that there's an initial reactive response, which is often something around what I think will please everyone and will be the least, cause the least amount of problems. But if I actually take a moment and I just say, let me check in with myself. Let me see actually what I need here. And I take even just a few moments, a few breaths, and then I can actually tap in and be like, oh, well, actually, I think we need to order dinner tonight because I'm too exhausted to cook. Or, I'm really craving kale. So I want to make myself a big kale salad. And then here's some ideas of what I can help make for you, right? So just that simple moment, checking in with yourself, that's what you need before you can create a boundary. Because if you don't know what you need, then your boundary is likely to be an attempt to control someone else's behavior. Boom. And we shouldn't be doing that because it's not going to work, number one. And number two, you're robbing that person of their own ability to do that for themselves. So who is in the spotlight? What are your needs? And then once you assess what your needs are, so in a particular relationship, if you're feeling like, you know what, like, here's what I need. This is something that I need. And then you set it up in a statement that is very clear, very concise. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to defend it. You just simply have to be able to say it and saying it in a way where it is not putting the other person down. It's just stating a need that you have. So a really good way to do this is as an if-then statement. If there is alcohol in the house, then I am going to leave. Or if there is too much drinking, then I'm going to leave. Or another one could be, if I stay up late, then I will sleep in and I won't be able to do these chores. Or, for my kids, if I get to make boundaries for them, if you want to read 3 books tonight, then I will not tell you a fairy tale made up story, which is something that we do. So they get to have the choice, if this happens, then this other thing then does or doesn't happen. And it's really clean. I really like that format. I've been practicing it and it works, guys. I'll tell you, it works really well with kids. They really respond well to if this, then this, and then they go, okay. But in adult relationships, it can work really nicely too. And one thing that my therapist said that was really helpful is she said, boundaries equal pushback. So when you're setting a boundary and you say, you give that if then statement, or if you just say, I don't feel comfortable when this happens, therefore I am choosing this alternative action, or this, I'm going to go here instead, right? When you make that kind of a statement, expect pushback. Boundaries equals pushback, especially in people that don't like boundaries. They're the worst because they don't understand. They're like, well, why? Well, what do you mean? Well, I thought that everything was good. And it's like, well, it's not for me. And all you have to say is really, this is what I feel comfortable with at this time. And the nice thing too that I've been learning about boundaries is that they are about what you need in the present moment. It has nothing to do with the past. It has nothing to do with the anticipated future. But boundaries are there to serve your needs in the moment. So I have a need. I'm feeling really uncomfortable about something. So let me tap in. What are my needs? Then I express those needs for something that's happening in the moment that's going to give me a sense of safety and security. So the boundary is not, it can be for someone else, but it really should be about yourself and what you need to feel safe. Does that make sense? Because if we keep ourselves on the focus, then who receives the benefit? Well, we do, and probably the other person will too, once they understand that we're making healthy boundaries, and then they can start to do it. I know for myself, You know, there's a handful of strong women in my life who are really good at this. They'll say, thank you for that invitation, but I don't go to those types of places. Or thank you for that, but I don't go out after 8 p.m. You know, it's just very clear. It's not a judgment. Or they'll say, you know, I choose to eat this way because this is what feels good in my body. There's no, you know, I'm sorry, but you know, here's the way that sometimes, you know, but other times no, it's just clear. And I really appreciate that, you know, because then I know that you know, if I can hear it in terms of they're taking care of their needs, then I can anticipate their need next time. And I can say, hey, do you want to go out? Do you want to do an afternoon walk? Since you don't go out after 8, how about, you know, could you meet me at noon? Right? Because I'm not going to ask them anymore to go out after 8 p.m. because, you know, they've already made that boundary very clear. You know, this is just an example, but, you know, you can use this in any place. Yeah, a few other things that are important is that boundaries are not walls. So think about a boundary as something that's flexible. And again, it's from your perspective. So when you set a boundary, you can change it. And someone in my group class was saying, you know, I said to my son who was trying to decide between colleges, you know, you can choose this, make the best choice based on where you are now, and you can change your mind, you know. And suddenly her son was like, he was able to like really relax and feel like, okay, it's not like the end of this is not where my life, you know, this is not a deciding factor whether my life ends or begins, right? It can be something that's flexible. So if we think of a boundary in that way, that in this moment, this is what I need, and I'm going to keep it as long as I need it. And if it no longer serves me or works, I can change it. Like, that's so cool. How amazing is that? And it takes that finality out of it so that you can feel comfortable refining your boundaries based on what you need. Another thing that you can do is you can always write a letter. And this is something that can be really helpful, especially for people that don't tend to hear boundaries, or they tend to challenge them, or they tend to ignore them or deny them. Is, you know, if it's a really important thing, you can speak it out in person, and then you can also write a letter. And you know, again, very simple. It can be just a few lines within a larger, just check in, hi, how you doing letter. You could just have, you know, a statement that is a very clear boundary that you set. Then you make a photocopy of that and you keep it. So that way, if it ever gets challenged or it's not understood, you can say, well, actually, I did write that down for you, and it's still a very important boundary for me. And you don't even have to say boundary. You know, this is a really important thing for me to feel comfortable, right? And then you have that paper proof. All right, so now I want to switch gears and share a few readings from you from one of my teachers, Matthew Wood. This is a book called 7 Herbs, Plants as Teachers. This is a wonderful book for herbalists. It goes through different stories in the Bible and relates them to different plants and these different guideposts and gateways from sort of as part of the development of the psyche and the development of spirituality. So it's a really, really profound book. And me and some girlfriends years ago actually went through and we only got to the first 4 plants, but we took the first 4 plants together and went through the guideposts together. It was a very profound experience. So I want to read to you first about poor boundaries and disease. And this is something that Matthew talks about. So this is page 35. It says, opposition and similitude are also principles by which an organism is moved to health or disease. The primordial lesson of spiritual life is also the primordial law of healing. By opposition, by the entry of a malevolent agency into another, disease is created. So just think about that. So we've got these dynamics of opposites and similars. And so when there's an opposition and this force, this malevolent force enters in and creates this tension, this is how disease is created. We can think of this as just mental disruption or dis-ease, you know, lack of ease in the mind, or literally physical disease. He goes on to say, on the other hand, by the application of similitude, the disease is removed. So this is the homeopathy idea of like cures like. So if we're fighting after and we're trying to push someone out of our space, we'll actually create more resistance. But if we go in with a similar energy or a similar, if we go in with what is similar between us, then we might be able to make some headway. The similar embodies the process the organism is trying to go through to rid itself of the foreign presence. Okay? So if I go in and I say, you know, I don't like this about you, I'm opposing what that person is doing, and I say, and you need to stop it, or I'm going to punish you in whatever way. We're going after and we're making an opposition. Whereas if I just go back into my own self and I'm trying to hold on to my peace, and I can then say, well, by holding on to this peace, now I can enter into this discussion and this conversation in a way where I am holding my own needs, and also I am trusting that the other person's needs will be met. Then we're working with the law of similars. And we can rid this foreign substance, right? So by working with similars, we also push away, we create that boundary with the parts, not the whole person, but the parts that we can no longer tolerate, the parts that are creating disease. He goes on to say the herb or substance which is similar is the one that embodies the polarity created by the opposites that are fighting with each other. It has gone through that process and has reconciled the contrarium. Every healing plant, mineral, or animal is the embodiment of a conflict in the environment, which has been reconciled. The similar remedy teaches the organism how to handle what is resisting or sympathizes with its efforts. So our plant friends, they are constantly embodying these opposites, constantly working on creating boundaries and creating positive communication so that they can thrive, and likely the other plants will thrive. And this is something that's really interesting about sagebrush. Sagebrush is Artemisia tridenta. This is not the garden sage. This is not the mint family, Salvia officinalis. We're not talking about this. We're talking about a plant in the Artemisia family, or the aster family. It's the aster family, the Artemisia subfamily. And this is a desert. This is a shrubby desert plant. It grows in California. It was a very well used plant by a lot of California indigenous people. And what's so interesting about this plant is that it grows in very barren places, but when it starts to grow, it will take off and it will really spread throughout the environment and actually create it, allow it to be more hospitable for other native plants. And so one thing that's interesting is it will talk to other plants. It will actually communicate by sending out different volatile organic compounds into the environment. And it will tell other plants in the area, oh, there's a predator coming, so make more of these oils. Or there is a disease sweeping through, make more of these. We're in a drought, conserve your water. And so we'll actually look out for other plants, but at the same time, it is doing that by knowing what it needs. It focuses on its own requirements and then communicates that clearly, and everyone in that ecosystem benefits. Brilliant, hey? So that's one thing. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was what happens when we ignore our needs, right? What happens when we actually don't pay attention to what we need? So this is from the Sagebrush chapter, page 71. So Matthew says, when a healthy need is thwarted, we resort to compensatory behavior. The patterns that result are like scar tissue formed over a wound. They are not alive with the impulse of a heart expressing itself sincerely, but are artificially constructed and therefore dead. So when we don't pay attention to our own needs, we create these patterns that become like scar tissue, and our life force is no longer in those patterns. It is just sort of a holding state of dead material from something that happened in the past. Isn't that interesting? As long as behavior stems from neurotic patterns, it cannot lead to happiness. It will drive healthy people away. And how many of you have had that where I think most of us who've been through our 20s have had that experience where, you're in your early life funk, and why do I keep attracting people with these same patterns? Why can't I find, a good community or the right boyfriend? And it's often because we are stuck in a pattern some sort of neurotic or pattern that is not serving us. It's not actually addressing our needs. And therefore, we're not going to be able to attract people who have healthy patterns as well. Yet neurosis is not easily stopped because a return to the true feeling brings unbearable pain. The result is a repetitive cycle. The essence of sagebrush is summed up in the phrase, I will never get what I want. And so, how many times do we not set a boundary because we're too afraid that it's not going to work? If I express my needs, they won't be met. So, I'm not going to say anything. But that's self-defeating, and that's going to keep us locked in this pattern of discomfort, dis-ease, this pattern of pain. If we are able to give up what we want the most, a space opens which we can receive the answer to the desire. If then we can receive what we have desired intensely, we will know that we have received it not because of anything we did, but because God or the universe or providence or whatever we call it has answered our need. We have been taken care of by a higher power. Receiving makes us grateful to this provider, as we could not have been had we thought to take care of our needs through our own personal effort. So part of what Sagebrush teaches us and part of what boundary work helps us to do is, again, check in with our own needs. And if we don't, we know what's going to happen, right? We just explore that. But if we can actually really, really take it seriously and say, okay, here are my needs. And we might come to a place where we say, I don't know what to do. These are my needs and I don't know how to express them. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know where to go with them. And that's actually a very good place to be. That's a place where we can say, help, right? We can pray. We can ask for a higher power. We can reach out to another person whose counsel we really respect, and maybe someone who's on a spiritual path that is further along than we are. We can reach out and ask for that support and be open to receiving what it is we need to hear. And the thing about it is that it's not, as soon as we identify the need, it doesn't mean that we have to act on it right away. I'm finding in my own practices that once I identify it, I have to stew it and chew on it and listen and keep my ears open to little snippets that come through that help me get clearer and clearer about what my next steps are. And then when it feels in my body like, okay, now I'm ready, then the language comes forward quite easily, and the way to do it and the timing of when to do it comes really easily. So I love that. I just love that passage here and how he connects it to sagebrush, of that idea of I will never get what I want. But really what sagebrush is a cleansing herb. It's clearing. It creates the space so that what we need can actually come in. We can get out of our own way, as is often spoken, and let the answer come in. Let the support come in. So let's talk a little bit more about sagebrush and how we can use it. So Matthew Wood gives some really specific indications in his book of the type of person that benefits most, that from what he's seen in his practice. So he talks about the person that has a wind-swept face. So they look like they've been dried out, like maybe they have thinner, more wrinkled skin. They sometimes have auburn hair, or sort of just a lighter tone of hair. They look really tired, and their eyes especially look tired. Their eyes can also be dry or red. And again, this is the inability to see their way forward. The eyes being connected to vision, and in Chinese medicine, the liver, who's the general of the army, who tells everyone what to do. And so if we don't have that inner ability to tell ourselves, see what it is we need to see, have the vision of the whole battlefield, and then be able to put everything into action, then, it's exhausting. We get completely drained by that. And this plant grows in a windswept area, it grows across desert land. And so it works with people that also have that sort of dried out desert appearance. And you might even hear them say, it's not worth it. I'll never get that. It'll never happen. If they're talking in that sort of Eeyore way, you might think sagebrush might be a good remedy for them. So how do we work with sage? Well, you can work with it as an amulet. So you can get a little bit of sagebrush and put it in a necklace. You can have it in your personal space around you to help remind you of the work that you're doing. It's also been used as a tea. Now it's very, very strong with volatile oils. So I would just use maybe like a half a teaspoon per cup, and just use that as something that you might sip on throughout the day, not something that you're going to take. Really, again, for boundaries, we're talking more of it as sort of a nudging agent, and not necessarily using it for all the pharmaceutical, or not pharmaceutical, phytochemical needs that we might have. But it does work on the lungs. It has a great ability to clear the respiratory system, mucus. It also helps with menopause and different reproductive complaints. So you can look into those uses and maybe modify the dose. The other way that you can work with it is as a smudge. And I remember when I was in college, I was living in Asheville, North Carolina, in this little house out in, I think it was Hendersonville, out in the mountains, with a few other roommates. And I was just feeling like I just kept feeling like I was in this repetitive cycle of not having my needs met, and just not finding suitable partners that were actually kind of able to meet me on the level I was at. And I was just so frustrated. I was like, why does this keep happening again and again and again? I get attracted to these guys and they just end up being totally bad for me. And I got some sagebrush from this little, it was actually a Hare Krishna shop, believe it or not. It had a bunch, I didn't know that at the time. It was just, I just thought it was like an Indian yoga. I was really into yoga. Had just started practicing yoga at that time when I was 18. And so I loved this shop though. And they had all sorts of different, new agey things. And they had a sagebrush smudge. And so I bought it and I brought it home, and I was like, okay, let me just clear out the energy. And you know what it ended up doing for me is I just ended up getting into a space where I was like, what do I need? What do I want? And I didn't date anyone for a long time. I actually took a lot of, at that time it was like maybe 3 or 4 months, which for me was a long, long time. but I actually, was able to maintain that, which I hadn't in the past, to contain my own energy and my own space, hold and maintain that space. And then the subsequent relationships ended up being better and better, because I had just sort of broken that cycle that I was in. You can also use it as an insect repellent. It actually has a lot of antimicrobial, and it's it's repellent. So it has, it can be used for washing your floors. So you can make a strong tea out of sagebrush and mop your floors. You can wash your walls with it. If you're just feeling like you really need a deep clean or a deep reset in your physical space, then you can use it in all of those different ways, just to be a cleansing agent. And as a flower essence, it's also really good. I'm going to read, this is from the Flower Essence Society. This is what they say about sagebrush. It improves the essential awareness it increases essential awareness that releases what is extraneous and receptive. It helps us to build receptive emptiness, capable of transformation and change. It's also really good for releasing dysfunctional aspects of our self and our settings. So, again, this cleansing, clearing, space creating, and the eyes again show up in the flower essence. So you can take it as a flower essence, maybe 3 drops 3 times a day, to also help you see what needs to be seen, let go of what is extraneous, assess what are your essential needs, and then be able to create the space so that the answers of how to move forward can come in. So I hope this was interesting. I know this is a topic I really enjoyed preparing. So I'd love to hear your comments, anything that really stood out to you, where you're like, yeah, that's really helpful. Anything from your own personal life that might be helpful for other people to hear, you can always comment and add those in. And let me know if you've used sagebrush in any other way, or in the ways I've described. I would always love to hear personal stories of how this medicine can be used. So thank you all. I hope to see you on Saturday for our next summer herbal speaker series. Again, go to skyhouseherbs.com, click on the events, Summer Speaker Series tab, and then you can register right there. So I'll either see you there or I'll see you here next time. Take care, everyone.